Graham Fink Part 2.
Welcome back to Behind the Billboard.
Yeah.
Another episode, another week, well, another fortnight.
Well, yeah. Yeah, what have you been up to? Anything exciting?
Finky Part 2.
Yeah.
What have I been up to? I've been up to quite a bit.
Quite busy. You're quite short with me at the moment.
I am. I'm sorry. I'm a pain in the butt. I'm just getting it from all angles at the moment from the inside the machine.
Yeah. There were 3. I don't know how you managed it, but there were 3 phone calls on your phone.
3 phone calls at once.
Yeah, mate. You are the world's busiest man. I don't know how you've managed to find time.
But hey,
me.
The good thing is we're working together again.
Yeah, that was quite something.
We're actually working.
When your colleague said you spent it all day with him, and then you're going to do it again today.
Yeah, I mean, you are a lucky guy.
Right. Anyway, Graham Fink Part 2. There was too much chat earlier on the first one. I think we need to really get in, and there's so much to talk about. You know,
there is
Coke, and there's PlayStation, Dixons. And it's all brilliant billboards. You know?
And I also want to ask him about hanging out of a window. So we're going to get to that.
No. Okay.
We're definitely going to get to that.
Well, shall I go and get him, or do you want to get him?
You get him.
Okay, I'm going to hang out the window and see if he's done that reception bit. Graham Fink, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Sorry we had to cut you off in your prime last time, reenacting Paul Arden throwing a piece of paper on the floor, which was your salary or a phone number. Can you remember?
No, he wrote a phone number, but it was our salary, which is why we said yes.
Yeah. In an effort to avoid a part 3, we've never had a part 3 yet, as we were just saying. So we have to do part 2, and that's it. So we're going to kind of just pick the pace up a little bit.
Sure.
We're going to jump straight in. And we're going to go to Saatchi's, where you got that great job. I'm going to talk about Silk Cut, which I wrote this line last night. I think it's valid. It says, along with B&H, is probably the most iconic billboard campaign this country's ever seen. Maybe Economist, but you just think the volume of it, the quality.
We've obviously talked to a lot of people about the billboards from this era, and Silk Cut comes up a lot as kind of heroing the medium and kind of just as a, what is it? The visual shout.
Yeah.
It was coined on this show
by Tim Riley. But could you set the sort of scene for us? Did you know you were going to go and you just sort of done a massive job on a cigarette account, and you're going to go and do another one again? Or was it just massively exciting?
Well, I mean, funnily enough, we also had, when I was at college, we also had the Silk Cut campaign.
Oh, really?
And, but it wasn't the slashed silk. They were doing different things with squares.
Right.
And
off the pack, like using that.
Yeah, using the iconic square in the middle. And I did some stuff for low tar. I mean, it is pretty low, but it was an ultra low tar one. And and I did some work on that. And then I guess the account must have moved to Saatchi's. So when I went to Saatchi's, they had been running this slashed silk poster, for quite a long time. And I think there's all sorts of rumors about where it came from. But my version, the one I heard, was it's Charlie Saatchi who started all this because he collects modern art, contemporary art. And there's an Italian artist, Lucio Fontana, who slashed the canvas with a silk.
Yes.
And Charlie was, he is a big lover of a pun. So he said, we're just going to do slashed silk. So it's Silk Cut. And they ran the first post. Actually, they just got the world's top photographers just to slash a piece of silk. And that's all it was before it got into the sort of more sort of the cleverer stuff, I suppose, if you like. But they ran that slashed silk for apparently 18 months. So everybody absolutely got it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was different photography, slashing it in different ways, but it was always, I remember a single cut with a health warning underneath, and that was it.
Brilliant. And then, so you must have arrived, did you arrive when it had been established as they'd moved it on from the slash? Because you did the shower curtain, the birds and...
The birds, Stanley Knife.
Yes.
And the scissors.
I mean, could you talk to us about those ones you did? Because I imagine it must have been an incredibly ferociously competitive time. Everyone would probably want to do one. you know, you get the best photographers, like you say. You know, it must have been like sort of quite exciting, but quite scary, to try and get one out.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like the Benson and Hedges campaign that, we spoke of in part one. Is it was an open brief and anyone could come up with it. So all the art directors, of course, are doing these things in their spare time. And that's why I think they were so good. And you had great people like Alex Taylor, working on it, and Peter Gibb and all sorts.
We had Alex on episode 13 for anyone who wants to re-listen to that one. But yeah, she was she brought in the actual spool of cotton.
Beautiful. I mean, and so I was very excited to get cracking on this, and I really obviously wanted to get my work up, and and off we went, but it was getting it through Paul Arden, because that was a difficult thing. He was obviously very, very, it was very, very tough. He had lots of great stuff to choose from. And then what Paul would do, he would always select the kind of the short list. And every sort of 2 or 3 months, he would go down to see Charlie Saatchi,
right,
and show them to Charles. And Charles would, and Paul would have their secret discussion, come back and say, okay, we're going to run this one and this one or whatever.
So if we talk about the inspiration for Shower and Birds, are you watching a lot of Hitchcock back then? Was it
fun? Well, yes. I think in order, I think the first one was the Birds.
Okay, let's just flick onto that for a sec. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember this pretty well because I've been working on it for like all week. And, it's that usual thing when you used to put the work up on the wall, which no one ever does these days. I just love that.
We look at it on a PDF now.
You put all your art director's roughs up and everyone would walk in and comment.
Yeah.
I just think that's made the work better.
Yeah, make it better.
So I've been working on it all week, and there were lots and lots of ideas on the wall. And then I remember one evening, it was kind of like 8 o'clock in the evening, everyone had gone home, all the phones had stopped ringing, and I had a blank sheet of paper in front of me, and I literally picked up the Pentel pen and I drew this, what looked like the mother bird and the 3 baby birds, and she's giving them the worm, but the worm is like a little piece of cut silk.
Yeah.
And it was honestly one of those moments where, I could say that I didn't do it. It just was pure inspiration from somewhere. I wasn't even thinking about anything.
Were you doing other ideas as well, or did you sit down blank piece on just that?
And I think it had something to do with the fact I've been working on it all week, and there was just a moment of just some kind of a pause, and then...
So you'd plastered the walls, you'd done loads, right? By this point. Yeah.
And then this just came out from somewhere else. And
what I love about it is it kind of, you can do, I mean, it's easy to say this now looking back, but you can go, oh yeah, that's silk and that's cut and that's a silk. But what it does is there's a bit more of a narrative in this. It's very, I can build a whole little story about what's happening here as opposed to just a clever visual. Do you know what I mean? It's more than that. And the same with the shower curtain. Yeah. Even more so.
Yeah.
So did this get put in the mix?
So this, what I did is, because everybody else is trying to put their stuff on, you got to play by different rules. So I went and posted it on, I sellotaped it to Paul's desk. So it would take him at least a minute to rip it off.
Was that in danger of irritating, or is that a confident move?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, but Paul was always, he just loved different and people doing stuff differently. So I sellotaped it to his desk, and I knew he would see it. And I wrote a note saying, Paul, I hope you love this as much as I do. And he came in the next day and he said, yes, this is great. And obviously it got the Charlie Saatchi approval, and we made it.
Brilliant.
And Barney Edwards was the photographer on this. And we discussed a lot about the sky, because as I said before, the rules are that you cannot have all this kind of wide open spaces and healthy skies and blue skies and all this stuff. And so Barney actually got an artist to draw the sky in charcoal. So that's what you're looking at.
Oh, wow. Didn't know.
It's like a dark, stormy kind of sky, but it's very beautiful. And, Barney always used to tried to make his photography look like paintings, and it has a painterly feel to it. And
did you do it all in camera, like B&H stuff?
Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah, it's all done in camera. We may have sort of retouched that silk.
I was going to say, unless there's a clever bit of double-sided sticky tape there.
Probably, I can't remember. Well, I mean, it's probably we probably shot it with and without the silk and added it later.
One of the things that came up when Alexandra was on with us is she collected 200 pairs of scissors for the shoot. Did you go to the same painstaking effort to decide
the scissors?
What scissors to use? Yeah.
Aren't they secateurs? What are they?
No, they are. We must have had lots of scissors in and shears and we probably had a model maker help.
There's my gardening side coming out. I thought
the green fingered.
Yeah, I haven't done much fashion. Yeah.
And then the shower curtain.
Yeah, let's have a look at that.
Interesting because I sort of was always trying to think, can we do? How do we move this campaign on? Because obviously we're going to do puns with cut silk, etc. And I did have an idea once of if you put yourself in the position of the silk is going, oh, for fuck's sake, we're going to go again. I'm going to get cut. So I had an idea where there's a tiny little, there's a massive samurai sword. And it's coming in and it's kind of almost pinning it's about to slash the piece of silk. And I had a tiny, tiny piece of silk in the bottom left-hand corner of the poster and it was like cut out with just like a head. It was like that little morph puppet from Vision On, right? It was just like that.
Yeah.
You could just kind of make out a kind of a head and these two hands that were up, like it's just giving itself up. And that again, we went off and shot that in New York and came back and Paul didn't like the shot, so that never ran.
Really? Wow.
I think because when I worked with Hiro, the great Japanese photographer who died last year, and he was amazing. I remember his studio was the cleanest studio I've ever been. It was just like a laboratory. It was. I mean, you could have eaten off the floor. It was perfect. And the first thing Hiro said is, the sword in your visual is the wrong way round because it kind of had a slight curve.
Right.
And he said, so it's kind of curving underneath. And he said, actually, the samurai would always turn the sword up the other way and it's curves.
Right.
So it looks kind of right. And I said, well, that looks like it's upside down. He said, no, that's correct.
All right.
So we shot it like that. And we only shot it like that.
Yeah, did Paul say, did you shoot it both ways, Graham?
No, because we're just purists.
Exactly.
And I get back and Paul looks at it and the sword's the wrong way up. And because of the lighting, we couldn't do anything about it. So it never ran.
Right.
But, the silk shower curtain, obviously the Hitchcock movie and the original layout was exactly like you see it with a silhouette of the shower curtain, and it had a slash in the silk.
I was going to
already there.
Yeah, but there's not in this, right?
No, and so it goes, and so it's everyone loves it, and Charlie loves it, and Paul, and everything had to be approved by the ASA before it was, the Advertising Standards Authority, and they said it was too violent. Okay.
With the slashing?
With the slash. Mm-hmm. And so I took the slash out and I thought, actually, it's better.
I quite like the anticipation of that.
Because the audience, are putting this...
It's the narrative again, isn't it? You are literally letting them do the next bit.
So thank you, ASA. And the
Well, they are good for some things.
They are good for some things.
I know. I mean, just putting this work together, when we did Alexander Taylor as well, it's just brilliant, the work. It's just so ace. But this is one for me that stands out because it is, well, like you say, it's like when we had Paul Belford on talking about The Economist and how he got to the light bulb ad, because he said as an art director, there wasn't a whole load of scope for The Economist because there's all these headlines. So he desperately wanted to move it on, and he did. And I think this is what this does on the silk cut, but like you say, with the help of the ASA, and actually it falls into your lap, and you suddenly go. For me, it's one of the best ones because it's obviously cinema. It's cinematographic. Is that the right word? It's from the cinema. It's Hitchcocky. It's cinematic, but it just looks great as well.
And the photographer here, I mean, it's interesting because the photographer I chose was Graham Ford. He's just a lovely guy and a very, very talented photographer. And I think at the time he was the most expensive photographer in London. I remember when he broke through the £2,000 a day mark, and the word was going around, Graham Ford's £2,000 a day. Everybody else was like or 15 or whatever.
Those are the days.
But the thing about Graham is, he liked to do things quite straight. Mm-hmm. And he never really did sort of wacky stuff. And this obviously needs to be shot kind of quite straight because you absolutely get the gag. But I said to him, what can we do to make it a little bit different? And I kept pushing, what can we do? What can we do? And then we talked about different film stocks and all the rest of it. And I think he did a test on 5.4, and then I said, maybe what we should do when the film comes back from the lab, we should jump up and down on it.
Yeah,
right, on the transparency and kind of scratch it all up a bit.
Yeah.
And he really didn't want to do that, but I got him drunk. And I do remember he said, all right, let's try it. And he put it up and he jumped up and down on this transparency for a couple of minutes and it was all scratched. I said, no, I think you're right. But what we did end up doing is I was working with Polaroid had just bought out this new film, which was 35mm, and they bought it out in black and white. And actually, I think the silk cut, the birds, the scissors, was shot on the black and white Polaroid film, and this was shot on the color film. And if you really blew it up, you could see it's got a slight kind of pixelation to it.
Right.
And actually, Graham ended up doing that. So what he did is he shot it on that, and then he transferred that to the 5.4 thing. So it's just got something different. I mean, I would always
texture
try
to
and
it,
do that with
yeah.
everything. Just try and, once you've got it, well, how can we just get out another couple of percent?
It's always that, while you're there, because, that's the thing with advertising. Once you've finished, you can't go back. I mean, the one I was going to ask you was, I don't know if it's a stupid question, did you think about putting a figure in there or even a hint of a figure?
No.
Or was that?
Never.
No, good.
Are you allowed on cigarette advertising?
Well, you probably could because it was a silhouette, but, I didn't think it needed.
I suppose with the slash thing, you'd already kind of...
Yeah, you just kind of... Yeah. You know what it is.
Okay, well, look, let's...
And you've also got the Stanley Knife as well.
Yeah.
We've got the Stanley Knife. I mean, what I liked about that is very sort of... It's quite sort of Man Ray. Do you know what I mean? It's a useless object.
The solar-powered torch.
And, Daniel Joanno shot that.
Was this later on? Was Shower Curtain and...
I think this came a bit later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. It's so graphic. It's just so simple. And then after this, we're just going to quickly flick on. Sorry, Graham, I wasn't sure if this one was yours or not.
Yeah, no. It was a Christmas one, and it's a snowplow.
The snowplow, yeah.
And it looks like the snowplow is clearing off all the white silk to reveal the purple silk underneath. And again, Barney Edwards did this. I mean, whenever you work with Barney, it was never straightforward.
How did you shoot that?
Even if it was a simple sort of bottle and glass, Barney would build the biggest lighting rig known to man. And here we built the whole village or the whole street. It's actually a model. It's a model.
Yeah.
But it's huge, that model. I mean, I think that truck, that snowplow is probably like 2 meters, 2 meters long.
Right.
So those buildings are probably like 4-5 feet high.
Nice.
I mean, the snow reminds me of that artist. Is it Christo who covered things? The way
Christo.
it's just got Christo. That's right, and it's just got that it's just beautiful. You know, it's stunning, really. It's again, it feels very filmic. You know, there's a story going on here.
Well, Barney again just gave it a very beautiful filmic look, quite painterly.
Yeah.
Almost Christmas cardy.
Yeah. Christmas card. Cigarettes. Actually, while we're on cigarettes, before we move on, I want to ask, did you ever smoke?
No.
Okay. No.
So the ads don't work.
Right, we're going to move on from Saatchi's and we're going to go across Golden Square to another Saatchi, M&C Saatchi's, where you had an amazing tenure. We could talk about all sorts of things there, but we are going to go straight in because we haven't got a huge amount of time. We're going to talk about Dixons. Now, I read I did some research that, am I right in thinking this was a radio brief?
That's correct.
Right. But it's an outstanding billboard and print campaign. Could you just give us a bit of background? How, not knocking a radio brief, by the way.
No.
Radio briefs are great.
So every Monday morning, the head of traffic would come into my office with all the briefs for the week and who's going to do it. And I'm going through all the briefs, and then the Dixons one comes up. And at the time, no one wanted to work on Dixons because they were a nightmare client. The work wasn't particularly good.
Right.
Very workmanlike, I should say. And nobody really wanted to work on it. But the brief was fantastic. And I remember reading the single-minded proposition that said, visit us last, right?
Correct.
And the idea is that everyone, there was like this insight that people were shopping around, in real stores so they could go and see the TV sets or whatever. And then they would go online and find it much cheaper, right? And so this planner had come up with this idea, visit us last. So you go to the shop, then you go, and I thought, that's fantastic. I said, that's almost like, the end line.
Yeah.
And then I said, a radio brief, is that it? I'm sure we should be doing a whole campaign on it. This is fantastic. So I went to see this brilliant copywriter, Simon Dickett's. And I said, have a look at this. I think we should work on this,
Yeah.
And Simon loved it too. And so what we did is we started off with a radio thing, and we wrote this thing about, going to Jessop's or something, and then you try out all these kind of different cameras, and then you go to Dixons and buy it. So we had this sort of long story about, you do all of this, you look at everything, you see this, you see that, you ask all the questions, and then you go to Dixons and buy it, which was kind of like a bit of a rug pull.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the line, Dixons, the last place you want to go.
Yeah.
And I held it up, and we said that should be the opening poster. And then we thought, actually, I think Simon said, look, it should just be the end line because it's just quite a cool line to pay off with.
Yeah.
So after that, we actually wrote, we wrote the radio thing. We thought, okay, that's done. That's what the client wants. But now let's try and do some other ads. So we wrote these, well, we did quite a few actually. And the Selfridges one was the first one we did. And I wanted to try and use the branding from the Selfridges. So it's that black type on the yellow background. And then there was the Harrods one, which was going to be using a sort of a Harrods green, although the lawyers were worried we were going to get sued by Mohammed Al-Fayed. So we made it a little bit dark blue, but it's got that kind of gold type.
Yeah, they're just great trolling ads. They're trolling the customer service that you get at these big department stores.
We were very careful not to, put these other places down. We wanted to say, come, Selfridges, go there. It's great. You get all this stuff.
Yeah.
Walk, see the guy and wearing the Marc Jacobs sandals, etc. So we didn't want to slag them off in any way. We wanted to sort of build it up, and then the rug pull comes. Then go to Dixons and buy it.
It's incredibly brave because I don't know. I don't want to run down the world we're in now, but people would be all over this. You can't say that. That's going to upset them, blah, blah, blah. And like you said, you're not actually dissing them or being rude. You're bigging them up.
Yeah, you offer a great service.
The bigger up you do it,
but I think
the rug pull.
I don't know where it came along, because it's a brilliant brief, brilliant planner. Whoever, can you remember the name of the planner? Whoever you are, if you're listening, well done. We might find out.
Yeah,
we'll come back to that. But I think then, you're being quite humble as usual, because I think the next step, the art direction is incredible, because that is massive, to use the colour of Selfridges and then to stamp. A third of that ad is kind of logo. Most people go, fuck off, I'm not making that logo that big, but it's for a reason. And it sort of looks like, not a mistake, but it looks like kind of a little bit what's happened here?
Yeah,
which is very disruptive.
I wanted it to be a bit sort of Dada-esque, do you know what I mean? Like you almost just like cut it out very, and you juxtapose those two. It's a little bit of a montage.
I mean, you can feel the writing. You've had a lot of fun with it as well. You know that without sounding patronising, but when you look at a piece of work and you go, they've had a laugh here. They've really enjoyed doing this. No one's sort of. I remember Ajab Singh used to talk about the dabs of shit on work, and he said, "For me, there's no dabs." But like he would go like, "Logo, make it bigger." Oh shit, change the typography to that. But it feels so pure what you've got through here. Did you realise you had something pretty special when you did it? Or was it
I wasn't. No, I think we were just concentrating on doing the work. And then, a few people started to look at it and say, I think you're going to do very well with that.
Yeah.
I think we were very lucky that Dixons were in a lot of trouble and they desperately needed to do something different. And so actually they approved the stuff because that, so we did it all. And I remember, the account team were a bit nervous about all this. Yeah, but how are we going to get this through all the lawyers? We're slagging off Selfridges. And we say, no, we're not slagging off Selfridges. If you read it, look, we're bigging them up. And so I think that's how we got it all through.
Yeah.
And the client loved it. And
it's often in those moments when, don't waste a good crisis. When people are, it's sort of sad really in a way, but, when the clients are desperate, they are more open.
Exactly. To
more adventurous stuff. So great. I mean, it won everywhere, didn't it? It won virtually every award show. And it's still talked about now. It's amazing. I think it's
thank you.
Fabulous campaign. We're going to move on. Where are we now? Yeah.
TBWA.
Oh, yeah, the blood. We're now looking at Graham Fink's blood on the screen. So many questions. We actually featured this already on our Instagram. Remember, that's how we first chatted, and we had a little Twitter chat, and we did a mini write-up there, and I think that's where we got our connection. And I never realised it was also a little film you did, and I didn't actually realise it was your blood, and I didn't realise you took the shot of it. So it was a kind of Fink Productions already. But how did it come about you and Trev getting together? Because
so Trevor
Beattie.
Yeah, Trevor Beattie. I thought he was doing a great job at TBWA, and obviously the Sony PlayStation account was very famous, and he did some brilliant work there. And then he got me in to talk to him about doing a commercial. And I went off and I sort of wrote lots of ideas up. But one of these things, one of the little scenarios I had, again, it's a little bit like the silk cut. I like to sort of put myself in the position of the sort of person or I don't really know what I'm saying here, but
no, I know what you mean.
Just trying to, how do you, if everybody's doing things one way, how can you just look at it in a completely different way? And I thought, if you're playing Sony PlayStation and you are a massive gamer and you are absolutely obsessive about it and you are playing it like 24/7, let's say that you just love it so much you do not stop playing it, and you play it and you play it and you play it and play it and you don't sleep. And I thought, and let's say you play it for like 6 months. I mean, this is the thought in my head. You're going to be pretty ill at the end of that, right? And you're going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to do a blood test. And when he looks at your blood, he's going to see you've got all the symbols in your blood because you have become PlayStation.
Yeah.
So I wrote it up as a little, that scene about going to I wrote that up as a script, and then I scribbled up the poster, and I took it along to Trevor, and he said, look, I wouldn't do this TV. He said, the poster's great. And can't you do a film on the poster? So that was his idea. He said, do a film on the poster. So I said, great. So it was approved by the client, and I loved it because there's no headline, there's no logo, there's no web address, there's no QR code, there's nothing. And I thought, I've got to get my blood in this. So I went to the hospital and I talked to them about what I wanted to do. And cut a long story short, they were helpful. And so what I did is I donated some of my blood. They prepared it on a slide, and I went back a few days later and I photographed it through a high-powered microscope, which is the image you see. And then obviously I had to retouch in the symbols because they're not in my blood. And it just ran like that. And then the TV was the same. Actually that was more painful because I had to keep pricking my finger, and we were putting it under the microscope and filming it, and just trying to get it so it looked right. But it ran also as a 10-second TV commercial, and I took the sound. I found someone had recorded the sound of blood rushing through the veins inside the body, and that was the sound that accompanied the.
Yeah, we should definitely include that on the web.
I love hearing that story of how you got to the idea, because first time looking at it, I remember it going, well, it's either in you or you're not. You're either a gamer or you're not. And if you're a gamer, it's in your blood.
Exactly.
And it's the same as a super fan of a football team. It's something we say. It's something that we...
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. It's really interesting because it's in your blood, but the way you describe it,
it's different. It's like it's almost infected you. It's like
so that's from it's what's really interesting about that story is because like Dan's saying, oh yeah, it's the old in the blood gag, but it's done really well, and Graham put his blood in, and but won all the awards. But then no, it's not like that. Trev said maybe write some TV. You're there going, oh, this would be good, blah blah blah. But then. That's great on Trev as well to know that bit. That kind of classic.
Yeah, well, I think he's I think he's a great creative, and also he's very different to lots of people in the way he's run his stuff, and I like the way he writes. I think he's a very clever, very funny writer.
Yeah,
and it was great that he's spotted. Don't do the TV like this. Just keep it simple. Do it like the poster. So
yeah, I mean, you can imagine that be a great film, but in a way by stripping away more and more and more. Yeah. And kudos to the client. I mean, God, I'm looking at this now. It still looks so fresh. There's no logo, like I said, no end line, nothing. It's not insulting the audience. Like going, hey, it's in your blood, guys. Or anything that's in you. It's just there, and I think that is why. Well, that's why we're talking about it so much on our show, because it just is. It's right up there. It's an amazing piece of work.
Thank you.
Were you just, I know we're going to move on a bit, but were you a bit of a kind of freestyle-y kind of guy at that time? Because, you also, we're not going to talk about the photography because we haven't got time, but I know you did some photography of billboards. This is like just kind of like doing a super group with Trev, just bobbing in there. Were you consciously just always being a bit like that, being a collaborator? That's how you.
I like collaborating with people. It's like that thing about where the great ideas come from when you bring in these two sort of opposites, and that's why an art director works with a copywriter. Right? Very different ways of thinking.
Yeah,
I've always loved working with people, collaborating with them, and
yeah. No, because I like the way you take it beyond just the kind of classic team.
Well, I would always try to do that, because it's how do you stand out?
Yeah,
think different.
Yeah, it's good, really good. Right, I've been talking so much. I'm going to let Dan.
But I think that's part of one of the. It's a nice segue here into the Coca-Cola side of things. We start talking about how you reach out to a wider community in order to get great work away. I think Coca-Cola is a good example of it. This is, I Ogilvy Shanghai. Is that right?
That's correct.
You talk us through this the poster that we're looking at here, and
so it's quite a famous story, and I'm sure everybody knows it. So I won't sort of go into too much detail. But it was the year that Steve Jobs died, which was 10 years ago, last October or November, and I just happened to come back to the UK from China that week. And all the headlines were obviously about Steve Jobs dying. And on the front page of a couple of the national newspapers, there was someone had done this tribute to Steve Jobs where they'd taken the Apple logo and they put Steve Jobs' profile in where the bite mark is. And I think underneath, the only credit it said was designed by a Hong Kong student. And so I called my office in China. I said, we've got to find out who did this. And they're all going, well, boss, how are we going to do that? And I said, well, look, you know what I told you about? Nothing is impossible. You call every university, every school, every art in Hong Kong. Mm. So I think about 200 phone calls later, they said, yeah, we found this guy. His name's Jonathan Mak, with a K, not a C. And and I flew to Hong Kong to meet him. And he came to the hotel and I waiter part. I said, do you want a drink? He said, yeah, I'll have a Coca-Cola. And I had my phone with me and I got the waiter to take this picture of the two of us. And he's there with his drinking his Coke. Yeah, there he is.
There he is.
And that was it. So then he said, yes, I'm on my second year graphic design. And he looked at some of his work and I really liked him. I thought, if people have been reincarnated, he's been reincarnated a bunch of times. He was way, way beyond his age and his years. He was very, very intelligent, very mature young man. And
he was an illustrative graphic designer.
Yeah. But it was just how he would answer any question. It was just incredibly intelligent. And I thought, where is he getting this from? Oh, he must have been reincarnated. And anyway, I said to him, look, I would love to hire you and at the end of your course. And he said, well, I really probably want to do design or animation. And I said, well, look, if we get a brief, maybe we could work on a project. So then a few months later, we got this brief for Coca-Cola. And again, the proposition was sharing a Coke. And I sent it to him and said, look, if you want to have a go at this, you can do anything you like, any format, any medium. And a week later, he sent me back this sort of scribbled up, it's a kind of a maxed up version of the Coke cans, but they were actually passing a can of Coke, not a bottle.
Right.
But even from that sort of very low res, quick mock up, the minute I looked at it, I honestly thought this is the greatest poster that Coca-Cola have done in their history. Mm. And that happened actually that day. The head client of Coke was in the agency, and he came in and I presented it to him, and he said, "I think it's amazing." And I said, I'm now really worried because it's such a simple idea that you're going to tell me it's been done. And he said, no, it hasn't been done. And he said, and I'll tell you why. He said, because it breaks every rule in Coca-Cola. You're not allowed to muck around with their hallowed white ribbon.
Yeah. Did your heart sink, or were you then thinking?
I said, now listen, his name was Stephen Drummond, this client, Aussie guy. And he was, I said, now come on, Stephen, look, nothing is impossible. We can get this through. And he said, well, unfortunately, we'll have to go through our legal team in Atlanta, and then my heart did sink.
Yeah, legal team in Atlanta.
Did you pre-qualify the kind of the presentation of the idea with the Steve Jobs illustration and the fact that you'd been talking to?
No. I just said I'm just going to show you the greatest poster that Coca-Cola have ever done in their history. And he said, and he just laughed. He said, "You don't need to oversell." I said, "You wait till you see." And I turned the computer around, and he went, "Wow."
Right. Come on, I'm dying to know. I'm in Atlanta.
Anyway, no, so fast forward, lots of boring legal stuff. We did get it through. And I think they said for a limited time or something. Yeah. And then, we can't have a can, it's got to be a bottle. And then, the way he had drawn the white ribbon wasn't, I said, look, I can correct all that, So,
I mean,
but it's just a great idea of Jonathan's, and it went on to win the Cannes Grand Prix. And it's funny because I told him we were going to enter this thing, and then I called him. They were judging posters, and I wasn't sort of holding. I was just kind of hoping it was going to get something. And it was my first year at Ogilvy, and I thought it'd be quite nice if it wins something. And Paul Silburn, God rest his in peace, a very, very super talented guy, and he was on the jury, and he called me and he said, "Oh, your poster has just won 2 golds," and he said, "I'm judging out." I went, wow, it's incredible, and so already that was beyond my expectations.
Yes,
and then he said, and then he called back a bit later, and he said, "It's going to be put up for the Grand Prix with a few other things," and I thought, wow, and then he called back and said. He actually wound me up. He called back. He said,
very Sylvan.
He said, "There's a slight query I've got." I went, oh, here we go. And he said, "There's an upright version and there's a landscape version."
Right.
And I said, "Well, they both ran, if that's what you..." And he said, no, that's not my question. He said, "But we're all querying it." And I said, "Well, what's the query?" He said, "Well, we just want to know which one you want on the screen tomorrow night when you go and pick up the Grand Prix."
Really good.
So I immediately called Jonathan in Hong Kong, and I said, "Look, you know that Lions thing,
those gold things.
I want you to come and pick up the award." He said, "Well, when is it?" I said, "It's tomorrow." He said, "What, or the day after?" He said, "Oh, I can't come on Thursday." He said, "We've got this really important student presentation to all our..." I said, "No, listen, let me just talk to you." So you don't quite realise what you've done here, young man. And then he said, "Well, I don't have any money." I said, "Look, the Ogilvy machine will kick it into action. We're flying you here business class. You'll be picked up in a limo from the airport, and you'll be staying in an amazing hotel, and you'll be picking up the award tomorrow night or whatever."
Yeah.
Just fantastic for him, and he's great. We keep in touch, and actually, I had a Zoom call with him a few weeks ago because I haven't really seen him for for 10 years. His hair's grown.
And what's he doing?
He's working this really interesting design gaming company. He's still in Hong Kong, and he's really, really intelligent, lovely guy, and he's very, very humble. Hasn't all gone to his head, and he's still doing some really lovely work.
The thing I love about that story, everything you said is fascinating, thank you, but is the beginning bit where you went, "Oh, that's good, I like that," and then you said, "I'll go and get in contact with that person," and then here's a brief. I'm going to go and get someone who doesn't even work in the agency. It's not even the same country as me, and that you should be rewarded, because that's pushing the envelope. That's just trying to do. That thing. It's not. The only thing I was thinking about when you're telling it was if I was in the creative department at Ogilvy, I was thinking, what's going on? Why is Graham going over to Hong Kong giving this brief? Or was it kind of?
Well, it was an open brief, so anyone could come up with it.
Best idea wins, right?
And the best idea wins.
There we are. And there's a sort of list there.
It ended up becoming the most awarded ad in Coca-Cola's history.
Yeah. Well, there you are. You can even predict the future. That's pretty good.
No, he made me look good.
No, that's good. Right, so we're right at the end, actually, of the work. We have one last piece to talk about. I have no idea anything about this. It's for a magazine called Elephant. I do remember the ad, and it tickled me pink, something my mother would say, sorry. But it's a huge poster that says Elef, and then there's an ant. Sort of imagine Charles Saatchi would approve of that sort of visual punnery. What's going on there?
So I did this when I was at M&C Saatchi, and and I think it was a really interesting story. We were working on a pitch, and I can't remember what it was, and it was what working on pitches are like, especially as you get closer to the deadline, and it's like really, really late at night. It's like, I don't know, midnight or something, and everybody's waiting for the pizzas to arrive, and the beers are warm, and everyone is tired, and so this was probably done maybe sort of 14, 15 years ago, right? And computers weren't as fast then as they are now, and so we're waiting for huge files to be downloaded with the designers and the type. But we're all sort of sitting around this Mac. And we're watching this blue progress bar sort of move inch along. It's taking, and he says, "Oh, we've got another half an hour." Oh, God. And we're sitting there, and there's me and there's Sean Doyle, I got in to do some freelance stuff, brilliant writer, and there's a typographer and some account people, and it's just this lull, and everybody's like, the energy's gone. And I said, "Right, come on, we're going to do something." What? I said, I don't know. Sean, think of a word. And he said, "Oh, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, come on, you're a copywriter. Think of a word." He said, "Well, what sort of word?" And I said, "I don't know. Just think of a big word." And he said, "Elephant." I said, "Great, elephant." Right, Gareth put the elephant on the screen. So he puts elephant. No, make it look bigger, make it look elephant size. And so we're mucking around with that. Now we've just got elephant on the screen in big Futura bold or something. I said, elephant. Let's just get rid of the word ant and put a visual of an ant. And so he downloads a picture of an ant. No, not that ant. Get another ant. No, not that ant. No, hang on. Is there an ant that looks like an elephant? No, forget that. Right. So we go. So it's kind of just completely crazy. We're all, and everybody's up and shouting, and everyone's excited, and we find this elephant. We find this picture of this ant, and we make it smaller. And then I think the file by this time is now downloaded, so we just have the word elif, and we've got this tiny ant. And I said, "I think it's just brilliant." We print it out and stick it on the wall. I said, "No, what is it for?" "We need a client."
Hold on, is this the way it went?
Yeah, no, this is how it was. Yeah, we didn't have because I'm just thinking out, just wanting to get everyone
being creative, energized,
coming up with something. So we've got elephant on the wall, and someone said, "Well, I think there's elephant beer." I said, "Yeah, that's true, but no, we don't want a picture of beer." And then I'm thinking, what else? And I came across, there is a design magazine called an arts magazine called Elephant. And I thought that's what we should do. So underneath the ant, right at the bottom of the poster, really, really tiny, it just says elephantmag.com. Right, which is, you just see it there.
Yeah.
And so the next day I thought, I've got to get hold of the editor of Elephant and call him in. And so I get hold of this guy, his name's Mark Falley, and I think that's how you pronounce it. And he was a Magma. He also is part of Magma Bookshop.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I said, "Well, look, we've done this interesting idea for Elephant." And he sort of, "Who the hell are you?" I mean, I'm going M&C Saatchi. He says, "What? You?" Anyway, he came in, and I did the presentation to him. I made him sit right at the far end of the room. I said, "I'm just going to turn around. And I'm just going to show you a poster. I think you should run this cross-track." And he just said, "That's brilliant. I love it. We'll do it." And he said, "No, and I'll run it in the magazine as a print ad too."
Oh, yes.
So we ran it. I mean, we only got it on a handful of sites.
Brilliant story.
And I think it won a silver at Cannes. It got into D&AD, and I think it's just like a little fun story about how you can just make
brainstorm happens in a room with people.
I love the fact that there's a sign for the zoo as well.
Well, that ran near, obviously it must be up near Regent's Park, and I saw that one day. So it's just a sign, and there's there's a little sign to the London Zoo.
Yeah, it's a touch, isn't it? It sort of fits into your your photography, just walking down the street and just picking up stuff. Mate, thank you so much. There it is. Yeah, sorry. We're going to wrap up and do a couple of our little...
the classic segments, the favourite Billboard of all time. And we've been blessed by talking through some of your amazing work. So it doesn't have to be from your personal back catalogue. It can be from anywhere across the industry. Your favourite poster or Billboard of all time.
Well, it's obviously, that's really difficult because there's been so many fantastic posters done, and I think I said it at the beginning of part one, posters is my favourite format of medium out of all of it.
Yeah.
And I just like the idea that it's so big. I remember Paul Arden coming out. Paul Arden was the chairman of the jury on the British Campaign Poster Awards. And Paul came out to do his his opening speech, something of the evening before we handed everything out, all the awards out. And Paul, being Paul, he always does something dramatic. And he came out and it's like Grosvenor House is, heaving. And Paul said, good evening. And he takes out of his pocket this tiny piece of paper, like a, A6. It looked A6 from where we're sitting. And he very dramatically and slowly unfolded it to A4 and then to A3 and opened it bigger. And he ends up with a massive A0 piece of paper. And he said, I love posters because they're big. And so true. And what is nice is I always think is when you could take something really tiny, a bit like the blood stuff, which so tiny, and you blow it up massive.
Yeah.
And it was always something I loved doing at art school in the drawing classes. You take a drawing pin or a or a button on your shirt and you just do a really, really big drawing of it. I love because it really, really makes you look. So difficult with the favourite posters, but I picked this one for Parker Pen, and it was done at Collett's when I was there. And it's just, to me, it's just such a brilliant idea. It just says this much lead in this much pencil, and you've got the Parker pencil at the bottom, but at the top you've got 3 pencils, but they're sort of joined together in this kind of curly-whirly sort of design. And I thought, that's brilliant. It's just... so simple.
Yeah.
The colour's fantastic, that bright red pencil. And
it's a great poster.
It's just
It's
brilliant.
a really good poster.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We're very pleased. You didn't pick an Economist poster. Nothing against the Economist, but everyone chooses the Economist. And we had a little bit of a chat about that, didn't we? So yeah, we're pleased about that. Actually, no, we're not going to do that. Probably haven't got time. What we were going to ask, honestly, you've told us so many brilliant things, Graham. It's a real pleasure. But for our listeners, old and young, people coming into the industry or been in there for a while, do you have any tips, or you've probably done it throughout the show, to be honest? But is there any little rules you live by, or stuff you'd say to people about posters?
About posters.
Yeah. What makes a great billboard? What's the
Well, I guess, the obvious things, it's got to be very simple. People are, unless it's at a bus stop, but people are busy, right? People don't want to look at ads. We all know this. They're looking at their phones, or they're thinking about where they're going to go next or what they've got to do. And you've just got to do something instant that, just catches their eye and makes them smile, makes them think. It's just a very, very simple message. Yeah. And what I also think is interesting, if a client briefs you to do a poster, there's meetings after meetings, right? And they tell you all of this stuff. They talk quite happily for an hour or two about their brand and their products and what they want it displayed. And then the planner goes off and puts it into a brief, and that's a lot of time. And then when it comes down to it, you've just got to come up with like a handful of words and an image, in a single image. And you have to sort of, and all that image and those 5 or 6 words has to encapsulate all of those meetings and all of that stuff that's been talked. So it's really, really difficult. And actually, Paul Arden used to say, if you're struggling with writing a TV commercial, do the poster, which I thought was a fantastic piece of advice. Yeah. So I'd nick that and I'd tell people to do that.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
And just we touched upon it on the Coca-Cola thing, is how you sell an idea to a client, especially when it's a poster. And we've talked about it with Saatchi. Obviously, you can, from the other side of the room, there's a couple of tips like that. But how do you tell the story when you're working with clients? You're wanting to sell an idea on a poster. How do you tell that story? Do you start at the research? Do you start at the? I
don't think there's any rules. I think sometimes you could just show them the poster. Sometimes it could be a long backstory. And I don't think there's any. I think.
Depends on the brief.
Just make it different every time. Just make it interesting for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Portland story for Coke was the one where I imagine many creatives listening to this would empathise with if it hadn't run, because so many things fail, don't they? To go, but you can't do that because
It had to go through corporate,
yeah, or you can't fuck with a logo. Or I remember when I was at BBH with Adam and we did a script for Audi, and we used that song. Janis Joplin, but Mercedes-Benz, and they said you can't because something like the parts for a Mercedes-Benz are also the same parts for it was like one of those bullshit things, but and Hegarty was really trying to sell it and we couldn't get it through. But it's like there's so many little mines to fuck you up on it, but you must, whether it was your stature or your standing in the Ogilvy network that got it through.
He said, I'm going to show you the greatest poster Coca-Cola will ever make. That's bold. Because
Walter Campbell used to say that thing about it. He used to say to me, it's 49% getting the idea and it's 51 getting it out there. You know, it's one thing to get Jonathan Mak to make it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's fair? You know, the selling.
Well, you know, Hugh Laurie said that there's no such thing as great ideas, only great execution of ideas.
Right.
And I think that's true. I mean, everyone's got ideas, right?
Yeah.
And some people have better ideas than others. But if all these ideas are sitting in your bottom drawer, they're not being seen. Yeah. And to get something made, as you know, is a very, very different animal.
Yeah.
And to get it made exactly as you want it, and actually to make it better, that's the thing. Because, you know, it's interesting, when you present something to a client, if you're really honest, is it 10 out of 10? Would you give it 10 out of 10? It's probably never, ever, ever 10 out of 10. And if you're judging ideas, you go, oh, God, you know, we're going to present presentations tomorrow. We've got a couple of ideas here. Yeah, that one's all right. I quite like that one. That's good. But, you know, so you might get a 7 out of 10. You might get an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever really a 9 or it's certainly not a 10.
Yeah.
And if you get that 8 out of 10 one through, then you've got to suddenly crank it up a few extra notches.
Yeah.
That's when you get like the great photographer, and you know you work with your typographer, and you get a great typeface, and you design it, you art direct it, you do anything. There's all those little tiny tricks or twists, or why don't we just flip the logo back to front or something?
I think it's the same in lots of creative medium as well. I think it's the same in TV world. You know, we've got an idea for a show, but it needs to go into story development and then to script work and then the director's eye. There are so many people involved in that part of the process that enhance an idea. But I think it takes a great creative director and a great client to understand that this thing is an 8, but it could be a 10.
Yeah.
In order to get it progressed.
It's good. Well, I think was this a 10? It was close to a 10.
You got to do your true or false though.
Oh yeah, sorry.
You've got your.
There were many things that people have asked us to ask you. One of them was Malcolm Venwell actually said, "Were you hanging upside down once outside Derek Hass's office when you worked at Saatchi's to show him some work? Is that true?"
It's kind of true. I was on a 6-month placement,
right?
And I think we were sort of doing all right, and it was kind of coming to the end of that. And I think we only had a week to go. And I think it was Christmas time or something. And I think the whole department had been out for a long lunch.
Yeah.
And when we came back, I had this ad that I wanted to present. And it wasn't to Derek Hass. I think, I was just going to show it to Alan Waldie. But anyway, for some reason, I was at Collett's. And
sorry, it wasn't Saatchi. Sorry.
It was at Collett's. And so Collett's at the time was in Euston Road. It was 14 floors. And the 15 floors, the creative department was on the 14th floor. So like hundreds of feet up. And I decided to to knock on Alan's window. Alan was on the 13th floor and I was on the 14th. But so what I did is I got the ad and I hung out of the windows, and I thought, we had these radiators with this kind of grill in it, and I thought I'll be okay because I'll put my left hand into the grill of the radiator, and so it will be impossible for me to fall. And with my right hand, if I lean down as far as I can, I could just about bang on the window with the layout.
Bruce Willis.
So I put a crash helmet on.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because that'll save you.
I put someone's crash helmet on, and I was with a couple of people, and they were up for it. So we opened the window. A few people tried to stop me. I wasn't having any of it, and I put my hand in the radiator, and then I reached down and I'm banging on the window with the layout. Well, apparently what happened is Alan Wardy was in his office, but it was his PA's office, and she has her back to the window, and Alan's talking to her, and he just sees his hand come down. He freaks out and runs out of the room, and then she turns around and screams, and then, of course, everybody came up to get me. But by this time, I thought, or maybe I'd do it on some other windows. So I ended up, I think, hanging out of about 5 or 6 windows. And luckily, it was all. I'm still here to tell the story. Yeah. But I did get a call. But it wasn't the cleverest thing to do. So the next day, the creative director Dave Brown got me in and just went absolutely ballistic. Yeah. Said, look, you're on a trial here, and if you'd fallen, he said someone would have had to be on the phone to your mum and dad.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So we didn't pass the 6 months test. They put us on they extended it for another 3 months.
Right. With a clause about hanging out windows.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm pleased you've lived to tell the tale.
There's another one as well that we've heard the rumour of. You once went to the British Arrows dressed as Robin Hood.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The difficult thing was to try to get to smuggle in the longbow. Because it was about 6 foot tall, and how I sort of did it is because it was all black tie.
Yeah.
So I slotted this longbow in through the back of my jacket, and it went down one of my trouser legs. So I was kind of walking in a bit like sort of the peg, and then I had the quiver and everything. Yeah, and then I dressed up as Robin Hood. Yeah.
Did you collect a load of arrows at that?
Well, no, it sort of backfired because we didn't win anything.
Brilliant.
So I went home with an empty quiver.
Well, nothing ventured. Well, nothing gained.
Exactly.
Oh man, it's not like that these days, is it? God, that should be the sort of tagline.
It's not like that these days.
Right, well, we could go on and on, but look, I know you've got places to go, people to see. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's been really enjoyable. Thank you.
Yeah,
very good.
Wow. That was like that was a sort of masterclass.
I was about to say masterclass.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I know we've had some big eggs on it, but I don't know about him, and it might be him and Hegarty.
Did it sound like I was trying to get? I've got an idea to sell, and I'm struggling with a client. Did it sound like that when I was asking?
That's what I was thinking.
Because I was like, what is Dan trying to sell here? Like, I know I do actually have an idea, and I was interested to hear about the Coca-Cola thing because it must be quite difficult going outside of the agency when he's obviously been inspired by the Apple thing, found the guy, then got a brief. Thought about the guy again, and there's
every level. It's brilliant.
There's creative teams that he had all over China that didn't get anywhere near that brief because he'd gone to Jonathan Mak.
It's audacious.
Yeah, it's
process, isn't it? Audacious, and to get. I love that.
But isn't that what it's about? Being a creative, isn't it? It's like I'm inspired by other things, and it
shouldn't stop at the. It's being creative in the process as well as the actual work, isn't it?
It's difficult. I mean, we've had it in my team. I've had to go outside for certain things because I feel like the specialist is required for this job, and that's a difficult thing. But selling the idea then to the client is part of our process as creatives, and
I was desperately thinking of writing it all down, but then like he said, every project's different, and you have to approach it differently. But I do. Yeah, it's that thing we were saying about half of it is coming up with the idea. The next bit is to bloody sell it and get it to run. If you don't, it doesn't really exist, does it?
I was talking to John, Silent John, yesterday, and he's never watched Mad Men. Did you know that?
Ooh.
Never watched Mad Men.
Okay.
They said he's just started it, and he's like, wow, Mad Men's amazing. I'm like, hello. Like,
I think John might have to not be on the show anymore.
Do you think we kicked him off?
Yeah.
think this just happened.
Sorry, John, mate. That's it.
Anyway, you get the Don Draper cell.
Yeah.
Is his style is exactly that. Is take them on the journey and deliver.
I can imagine Graham Fink being
Don Draper without the cigarette
charming.
though.
Yeah, and just it's a package, isn't it? And that's maybe why he has been or had his name on so many fantastic pieces of work. It's no coincidence.
Audacity has to be part of that. So hang out of a window, as we've just heard.
Yeah, there are some things you do.
And to throw a yucca plant and
build in the yucca.
It's those things that kind of that make you stand out and memorable, and that I think the personality to the thought process to go through those things has to come out when you're in pitch mode, in fight or flight. It has to be there.
I mean, he appears as a mild-mannered janitor. He's older now, but could be there is a fire. But you can tell when he's telling stories, he's sort of half laughing, thinking, "Shit, did I do that? Did that happen?" But it sort of has to, because no great work comes from just it doesn't just sort of drift off and land on people's desks.
Very good.
All right. Well, look,
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Should we go?
It's been the highlight of my week,
mate.
Except for yesterday when I spent all day with you.
Are we back on?
Back on.
Let's get a beer. John, we don't need John. Just John who? Everyone's Mad Men. Weird.